Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving deep into Your Faith is Your Fortune, which is by Neville Goddard. You've been diving into his work, and now we're here to kind of help connect the dots. And yeah,
Yeah, it's not just like positive thinking, is it? Goddard goes way deeper than that. It's almost like he's suggesting that we're not just pawns in Destiny's game, but that we are actually the players.
okay, so let's unpack that a little.
Yeah.
He uses that image of the Israelites seeing themselves as grasshoppers
Yeah.
next to giants. What's he getting at with that?
It's all about self-conception, right? They literally shrunk themselves in their own minds. Goddard would say that our experience reflects that. If you see yourself as small and not capable, then the world is going to feel full of giants. But when we change that inner image, then our reality starts to shift as well.
Oh, I see. So it's not about just like pasting on a smile and hoping for the best.
Not at all. He's
Hmm.
talking about a really fundamental shift in how we understand our own power. Our consciousness is the operant power, not some distant deity.
Hmm. He even says that what we often perceive as negative, bad things happening to us, that those are actually a reflection of our inner state. So is he saying that we're somehow attracting bad stuff on purpose?
It's more like imagine a mirror, right? It's going to reflect whatever's in front of it. So our experiences might actually be mirroring back to us these deeply held beliefs that we have about ourselves, about the world. It's not about blame or anything like that, but just understanding that creative power that we hold.
So instead of God controls everything, it's more like Goddard saying, hey, you are the God in this equation.
He wouldn't shy away from that at all. He even pointed to some biblical passages like, be still and know that I am God, to really kind of emphasize the power of that I am that exists within each of us.
So how do we move from, this being a concept to actually putting it into practice? Because it can sound very mystical.
Goddard was all about practical techniques. He talks about things like the power of feeling as if the thing that you want, the desire, is already real, and vividly imagining it as if you're living it, like right now.
Like Philip, the disciple of imagination.
Exactly. Goddard believed that what we impress upon our consciousness through that vivid feeling and imagination, it will externalize. He even compared it to how God creates, as described in the Bible. God calleth those things which be not as though they were.
So it's not enough to just, think it. We have to really feel it. We have to feel it as if it's real already.
You've hit on a really crucial point. Goddard placed a lot of emphasis on the feeling that inner conviction, as being the real key to manifestation. He actually recommended a specific visualization technique where you create a scene in your mind, like a snapshot, that would imply that your desire has already been manifested. So, for example, if you desired a new home, you might imagine yourself handing the keys to a friend to house sit while you're away on vacation.
Well, that's a very specific image to hold. Right. It's not just a vague, I have a house. It's like a snapshot that really implies that reality.
Exactly. And the more vivid and specific we can make those inner impressions, the more powerfully we're going to be influencing our reality.
And then there's the I am technique. Is he saying, like, if we just keep repeating, I am, that it's like a magic spell?
It's more about accessing a state of being. It's not just saying the words. It's about reaching this place of pure awareness, almost like a reset button on your self-concept.
And then from that kind of blank slate of I am, we can actually start defining ourselves as the person we want to become.
Precisely. It's about consciously choosing who you're being in each moment and aligning yourself with the reality that you want to experience.
So it's not fake it till you make it. It's more like claim it till you become it.
I like that. It's not about denying where you are, but it's about shifting your internal reality to match what you desire.
But in a world where there's so much negativity, how do we even begin to, stay in that positive state?
Well, Goddard compared our consciousness to a garden, right? And so we have to be really mindful of the seeds that we plant, the thoughts and beliefs that we entertain, just like a gardener would go through and weed out what's not serving the garden. We need to be really selective about what we allow to influence our minds.
Talks about, like, Simon, the disciple that learns to, like, guard his thoughts and only let in the ones that are aligned with what he actually wants.
Exactly. Become the gatekeeper of your own mind. Choose your information sources carefully. Be mindful of the conversations you engage in.
It's almost like he's saying that we need to become these, like, more conscious architects of our inner world.
Absolutely. Goddard's message is all about recognizing the innate power that we have to shape reality through the choices that we make in our minds.
We've talked about consciousness, but what about faith? Where does faith fit into all of this?
For Goddard, faith wasn't about wishful thinking or hoping for the best. He saw faith as this deep conviction in the reality that we're creating within ourselves, even before we see physical evidence of it in the outer world.
So it's not, I hope this happens. It's, I know this is already mine, even if I can't see it yet.
Exactly. True faith, for Goddard, really stemmed from that understanding that our inner world shapes our outer experience. He even said that doubt is the only force that's capable of disturbing the seed, the seed of our desires.
Like that image he uses of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. They didn't wait for it to part. They marched forward with the absolute conviction that it already had.
And for Goddard, their faith wasn't based on what they saw externally, but on this unshakable inner knowing that they were walking into a new reality.
So even when we're facing challenges, those moments of doubt, it's really about holding on to that inner certainty.
He'd say that's when it's most crucial. We'll dive deeper into, techniques for navigating those challenges in a bit. It's interesting you say that because that's where Goddard's concept of the interval of time comes in, right? Because there's often this gap between, having that inner knowing, that certainty, and actually seeing the physical manifestation of it in our lives.
Right, like when he talks about the seed being planted in the ground.
Precisely. We don't, keep digging it up every 5 minutes to see if it's sprouted, right? We trust the natural process of growth. Goddard understood that this gap can be really tough, especially in our, world of instant gratification.
He even had a technique for kind of working with that, right? That whole thing about mentally traveling through the days of the week.
Yeah, it's about using the feelings we already associate with certain days, right? So
Yeah.
you imagine, okay, say it's a Wednesday and you're experiencing your desire on that Wednesday, fully feeling it, really being in that experience. And then you mentally return to the present moment, but you're carrying that feeling, that fulfillment with you.
Oh, that's clever. So we're essentially anchoring ourselves in the feeling of the desire being fulfilled as if it's already happened. Almost like we fast forwarded to the happy ending of a movie or something.
Exactly. We already know the outcome, so we can relax and we can enjoy that unfolding. But what about those times when doubt feels kind of overwhelming? Those moments where it's like, is this really going to work?
You mean like those lions at the door moments that he talks about?
Exactly. Goddard uses that story of Daniel in the lion's den to kind of illustrate this, right? Daniel didn't deny the presence of the lions. He shifted his focus to, a higher power, to the reality that he knew he was creating within himself.
So it's about, even when we find ourselves in, what feels like a negative situation, we can choose where to direct our attention, right? We can find that empowering perspective.
Precisely. And it's often in those moments when we're really challenged that we actually, exercise our faith muscles, so to speak.
Okay, so we've planted the seed, we're tending the garden of our minds, we're holding on to faith, even when things get tough. But what about taking action? Is Goddard saying that we should just sit back and wait for things to happen?
Not at all. Goddard actually believed that action was a crucial part of this process, but with a twist. He said that our actions should flow from our inner knowing, not from a place of fear or forcing things to happen.
So it's about aligned action. If we've truly anchored ourselves in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, that the right actions will almost kind of present themselves naturally.
Exactly. He uses that image of casting a fishing net. Once the net has been cast, we trust that, the fish will come. We don't need to keep reeling it in frantically or, keep checking to see if we caught anything.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But how do we know what those aligned actions are? What if our intuition feels kind of quiet?
Well, Goddard believed that our intuition is divine guidance. It's that, still small voice within. He would say, trust those gut feelings, even if they don't seem logical, at first. And he even suggests that our desires themselves are a form of guidance. They're like breadcrumbs leading us toward, our fullest potential.
So it's not about suppressing our desires or denying them, but actually seeing them as clues to, our path.
Exactly. They're not random. They're these divinely inspired impulses pointing us in the direction of, the greatest expression of ourselves.
This is where his interpretations of the Bible get really interesting, right? He doesn't see these stories as these literal events, but as these inner dramas that are playing out within each of us.
He saw the Bible as this incredible allegory for the journey of the soul, a guidebook for self-discovery and spiritual awakening.
He even goes so far as to say that the characters in the Bible represent different aspects of ourselves, like the 12 disciples, for example.
Oh, absolutely. He saw them as these 12 qualities of mind that we can cultivate to achieve greater mastery in our lives. Think of it like having a well-disciplined army within you, with each disciple representing a specific quality.
Okay, so who's in this inner army? Who are these disciples in terms of qualities?
Well, you've got Peter the Rock, symbolizing that unwavering faith. You've got Andrew, who embodies courage and initiative. John represents, love and compassion. And then, as we mentioned earlier, there's Philip, the master of imagination.
And let's not forget about Thomas, the doubter.
Oh, Thomas is essential too, reminding us to question our assumptions and to seek, a deeper understanding. And then, of course, you've got James, the just judge, representing wise discernment. Matthew symbolizes the ability to receive our desires with open arms.
This is fascinating. It's like we each have this, like, dream team within us just ready to help us navigate life's challenges and manifest our desires.
Exactly. And just like any good team, these qualities need to be cultivated. They need to be balanced for us to really, reach our full potential.
This is definitely giving me a lot to think about in terms of, like, my own inner landscape. But Goddard also talks about a more external kind of force at play, this concept of liquid light. What is that all about?
Ah, yes, liquid light. It's one of Goddard's most evocative metaphors. He uses it to describe this unseen energy that permeates, like, everything, this primal substance from which all things are created.
So it's not just like, empty space out there. It's this dynamic, responsive energy field.
Exactly. And here's the really key part. Goddard believed that this liquid light is shaped by our consciousness. So we're not just passive observers in a predetermined world, we're actually active participants, molding this energy with our thoughts, with our beliefs.
So we're almost like sculptors working with this liquid light, and our thoughts and beliefs are our tools.
That's a great way to visualize it. Goddard would say that we are constantly shaping and reshaping our reality with every thought that we think, every belief that we hold.
That's a lot of responsibility, no pressure.
Right. It is a lot of responsibility, but it's also incredibly empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Once we really grasp this concept that we're not victims of circumstance, we realize that we are co-creators of our experience.
This makes me think about Goddard's interpretation of the story of the flood. He wouldn't see that as a literal event, would he?
Of course not. He saw the ark as a representation of our consciousness. It's carrying within it the seeds of all possibilities. And the dove that's sent out to find dry land, that symbolizes our desires, seeking a place to manifest in the physical world.
So the message isn't, wait for the flood to subside, but become the ark, nurture the seeds of your desires, and trust that they'll find fertile ground.
You got it. Goddard would say that we have the power within us to navigate any storm, right?
Mm-hmm.
To create a reality that is even more beautiful than we can imagine.
Okay, so we're becoming these conscious architects of our inner world. We're working with this liquid light to shape our experience. But how do we actually bridge the gap between that inner knowing and seeing those tangible results in our lives?
That's where Goddard's practical techniques really come into play. He offers this whole toolbox of techniques designed to help us align our inner and outer worlds.
Like his idea of, living in the end.
Exactly. It's about shifting our perception of time and experiencing our desires as if they're already our present reality.
I'm picking up on a theme here.
Yeah.
It all comes back to the feeling.
Precisely. Goddard believed that our feelings are these powerful magnets, right? They draw into our experience whatever resonates with our dominant emotional state. He called it the I am impression for a reason.
So it's not enough to just, think about what we want. We have to really feel it in our hearts as if it's already ours. And he suggests using things like affirmations to help us with this.
Affirmations can be such a powerful tool, especially when they're charged with emotion, right? So repeating phrases like, I am healthy, or, I am wealthy, I am loved. These things can be so incredibly effective in shifting our kind of subconscious beliefs.
It's like we're planting those seeds in the garden of our minds. We're watering them with emotion, and we're watching them grow into our reality.
I love that analogy. It perfectly captures the essence of Goddard's teachings, that we're not these passive recipients of reality, but that we are active creators.
But what about those times, though, when doubt creeps in? When we have those, pesky negative thoughts that threaten to kind of sabotage our efforts?
Oh, Goddard totally understood that doubt is a very natural part of the human experience. He didn't advocate for denying or suppressing those thoughts, but more about gently redirecting our attention towards those more empowering beliefs.
So it's not about, pretending to be positive all the time or denying that those negative thoughts exist. It's more about just becoming aware of them and choosing to focus on the thoughts that are actually serving our highest good.
Exactly. He even suggests that we treat our consciousness like a garden that needs regular weeding, right? We need to be diligent about uprooting those negative thoughts and beliefs that are hindering our growth.
And he places a lot of emphasis on forgiveness as well.
Forgiveness is essential, both for ourselves and for others. Holding on to resentment, holding on to guilt, it's like holding on to weeds in the garden of our minds. It prevents that new growth from flourishing.
So part of this process involves, like, releasing the past, clearing out those old limiting beliefs, and making space for something new to emerge.
Exactly. It's about creating that fertile inner landscape where our desires can really take root and grow.
This is all making a lot of sense, but it can feel, a little overwhelming to think about applying all of this in our daily lives. What would you say is the most important takeaway from Goddard's teachings, the one thing our listeners should really focus on?
I think if there's one thing to really take away from all of this, it's that we are not at the mercy of circumstance. We are powerful creators. We are endowed with this incredible ability to shape our experience.
It's not always easy, but it's incredibly empowering.
Absolutely. And, Goddard wouldn't want us to get bogged down in, dogma or rigid rules. He'd want us to approach this with a sense of curiosity, a sense of playfulness, and a willingness to experiment.
To embrace the journey of self-discovery and to trust that we have everything we need within us to create a life that is truly extraordinary.
Exactly. And sometimes that journey involves revisiting our past and choosing to see it through a more empowering lens.
You're referring to his technique of revision, right?
Yeah.
Where we can go back in our minds and actually rewrite the script of our past experiences.
Exactly. It's a very powerful technique for healing old wounds, releasing those limiting beliefs, and creating a new reality that is more aligned with who we are today, with our desires.
Tell me a little bit more about how that works, because it sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, Goddard believed that our memories are not these fixed or immutable things, but that they're actually very fluid and adaptable. They're constantly being shaped by our perceptions, by our beliefs.
So it's not about, denying what happened or suppressing it. It's more about choosing to see it from a different perspective.
Precisely. We all have experiences in our past that, we might perceive as negative or even traumatic. Revision allows us to go back in our minds to re-experience those events. But this time, choose to focus on, the lessons that we learned, the strength that we gained, maybe even some positive outcomes that emerged as a result of those challenges.
It's like we're taking back control of our story. We're creating a new narrative that empowers us rather than disempowers us.
Exactly. We become the heroes of our own lives, rewriting the script to align with our current values and aspirations.
That's so powerful. But how can simply changing the way we remember something actually change our reality?
Well, Goddard believed that our memories are not just these, static recordings of the past. He saw them as these living, dynamic energies that continue to influence our present moment experience.
So by revisiting those memories and imbuing them with a new meaning, we're essentially changing the, energetic blueprint of our lives.
Exactly. We're essentially reprogramming our subconscious minds. We're replacing old limiting beliefs with new empowering ones.
This is starting to sound like a recipe for creating a life of miracles. But how do we know if it's actually working? What kind of signs should we be looking for?
Goddard would say the most important indicator is a shift in your inner experience. Do you feel lighter? Do you feel freer? Do you feel more empowered?
So it's not necessarily about looking for that, external validation. It's about trusting our intuition and acknowledging those positive changes that we're feeling within ourselves.
Precisely. He believed that our inner world is the ultimate mirror of our reality. When we make those positive changes within, our outer world will inevitably reflect those changes as well.
This is all so incredibly inspiring. But I'm curious, how do these principles apply in, the realm of relationships? Can we use these techniques to attract, a specific person into our lives?
That's a question a lot of people have. And Goddard addressed it very directly. He believed that we can absolutely use these principles to create more fulfilling relationships.
So does that mean, we can manifest a specific person?
Well, Goddard cautioned against trying to manipulate or control others, right? Remember, everyone has free will, so instead of trying to force someone to be with us, he suggested focusing on the qualities that we desire in a partner.
So if we want a partner who is, kind and compassionate and supportive, we need to first embody those qualities within ourselves.
Exactly. He believed that attracts that we attract into our lives people who resonate with our own kind of dominant beliefs and feelings.
So the key is to become the kind of person that we want to attract.
Precisely. Focus on your personal growth, develop the qualities that you admire, and trust that the universe will orchestrate the perfect encounter.
That's such a refreshing perspective on relationships. It shifts the focus from seeking validation externally to cultivating a really deep sense of love and worthiness within ourselves.
And it's that inner transformation that makes us magnetic to the right people.
It's about aligning our energy with the kind of love that we desire and trusting that the universe will handle all the details.
Exactly.
This has been incredibly insightful. But I'm wondering, what about those times when we feel, lost or confused, like we're not really sure what we want or how to move forward?
Goddard understood those moments of uncertainty. He would say that those are the times to really cultivate trust and surrender.
To let go of the need to control everything, allow the universe to kind of guide us.
Precisely. It's about surrendering our very limited perspective, our limited understanding, and opening ourselves to those infinite possibilities that exist beyond our current awareness.
He even suggested that, our intuition, our gut feelings are a form of divine guidance.
Exactly. He believed that still small voice within is constantly speaking to us, guiding us towards our highest good.
So it's about learning to actually listen to that inner wisdom, to trust those promptings, even when they don't make sense logically.
He really saw it as the voice of God speaking directly to us. And he urged people to pay attention to it, to not dismiss it.
So how do we, learn to discern that voice, to differentiate it from maybe, the noise of our own fears and doubts?
It takes practice. Goddard recommended creating space for stillness and silence in our lives, to quiet the mental chatter and create a space for our intuition to emerge.
So it's about cultivating a practice of mindfulness, of paying attention to our thoughts and feelings without judgment, without attaching to them.
Exactly. It's amazing what we start to discover about ourselves when we create that space for inner listening.
It's like we're tuning our inner radio dial to the right frequency so we can pick up those, subtle whispers of divine guidance.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about creating that space of receptivity where we can really hear that inner wisdom coming through.
Goddard also talks about, inspired action. It's not about just like blindly going through the motions.
Exactly. He believed that our actions are most powerful when they're aligned with that inner knowing, not driven by fear or desperation or trying to force things to happen.
So it's not about, frantically rowing our boat. It's about setting our sails in the right direction and then trusting the wind to carry us forward.
Exactly. When we're truly aligned with our desires, the right actions will often present themselves, almost effortlessly, as if they're being orchestrated by a higher power.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about those times when we feel stuck? When it's like we feel like we're doing all the right things, but we're not seeing any results?
Goddard understood those moments of frustration, and he would say those are the times when we need to surrender even more deeply, right? To trust that the universe is working behind the scenes in ways that we may not yet comprehend.
So it's about like, letting go of the need to control the outcome and trusting that the universe has a plan.
Exactly. And sometimes what we perceive as obstacles or even like delays are actually detours in disguise that are leading us to an even greater destination than we had initially envisioned.
That's a comforting thought. It's not
Right.
always easy to maintain that level of trust, especially when we're facing those challenging times. But I'm hearing a consistent theme in Goddard's teachings. It all comes back to faith.
Absolutely. Faith is the foundation of everything that Goddard taught. But he saw faith not as this like blind belief, but as this deep, unwavering conviction in the unseen reality that we are creating within ourselves.
So it's not, I hope that my desires will manifest. It's, I know with absolute certainty that they already have, even if I can't see the physical evidence yet.
Exactly. He would even go so far as to say that doubt is really the only thing that can truly derail us on this path. He compares it to like a weed that can choke the life out of the seeds of our desires.
So we need to be like, really diligent gardeners of our minds, nurturing those seeds of our desires, but also being willing to, weed out any doubts or fears that might be hindering that growth.
And sometimes, those doubts, they show up disguised as these perfectly reasonable excuses. It's too late, or, I'm not good enough. Things like this never happen to me.
Goddard would say, though, that those are just stories that we're telling ourselves, stories that are rooted in fear and limitation.
And we always have the power to choose different stories, more empowering stories that are in greater alignment with our true potential. And he often spoke about the power of imagination in terms of like rewriting those stories.
Like his interpretation of, Joshua and the Battle of Jericho, for example.
Hmm.
He wouldn't see that as like, a literal historical event, would he?
Not at all. He saw it as this powerful metaphor for the power of faith and imagination to help us overcome even the most, seemingly insurmountable obstacles.
So the walls of Jericho represent our limiting beliefs. And the act of, marching around the city and blowing the trumpets, that symbolizes the power of our focused intention to break down those barriers.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we don't overcome challenges by fighting against them, but by transcending them through a shift in consciousness.
That's such a powerful image. It reminds me of that quote by Marianne Williamson where she says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure."
That is beautiful. And it really does perfectly encapsulate the essence of Goddard's message, that we are all capable of achieving these extraordinary things when we align ourselves with the infinite power of our own consciousness.
It's about reclaiming our divine birthright as creators and stepping boldly into the reality that we desire.
And it's a lifelong journey, a journey of self-discovery, of pushing beyond our perceived limitations and embracing those infinite possibilities that exist within each and every one of us.
This deep dive has been truly transformative. It's given us so much to think about, and even more importantly, to feel our way into.
Absolutely. And remember, the most important takeaway from all of this is this. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are a powerful creator. You are endowed with this incredible ability to shape your reality.
It's time to step into that power with courage, with conviction, and a healthy dose of faith.
And to remember that the universe is always conspiring to support you in manifesting your highest potential.
This has been an incredible exploration of Neville Goddard's profound teachings. We hope this deep dive empowers you to unlock your own inner power and create a life that truly reflects the limitless beauty of your being.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of self-discovery. Until next time, may you live in the joyous realization that your faith is indeed your fortune.
Help us continue to share this type of information. Click the bell icon to subscribe. Don't forget to like and comment. Share your thoughts. Do you believe a person's inner state shapes their external world? Let us know down below.